So my name is Jana. I'm a security manager on the ecosystem security team here at Atlasian. And presenting with me today is Malika, and she is a security engineer on the same team. So our team, we're responsible primarily for ensuring that our marketplace ecosystem at Atlassian is secure. And so today, we wanted to share some of our experiences dealing with the challenges that are typical for this domain, and then some of the ways that we have chosen to approach these particular challenges in this problem space. So I assume that at least some of you in the audience have some experience or know a little bit about the type of work that a product security engineer would typically do. So if you're part of a product security team, you must know how difficult it is to even secure a single product, right? There is a lot of complexity in making sure that vulnerabilities don't slip through the cracks, and kind of making sure that your engineering team stays on top of security best practices that you define, right? So imagine for a second that you had to secure not one, but thousands of different applications. Like, where would you even begin, right? How would you tackle this challenge? And this is exactly the type of problem that my team finds ourselves in as we look to secure our ecosystem marketplace and all of the apps available there. So this is what we're going to talk about today. But before I go any further in terms of the problem itself, I want to kind of first define some of the basic concepts so we're all on the same page in terms of what we're talking about. First off, what is a marketplace ecosystem? So when we talk about a marketplace ecosystem, what you typically think about is a large software company, kind of like the ones you see on the slide here. Google, Microsoft, Salesforce, Slack are just some examples, right? So these really large companies have a core product used by a really large number of users. And all these customers, they each have their own unique business needs. And sometimes the core product functionality is just not enough to meet all the needs of these users. So what these companies do is they provide a development framework on top of their core product that allows people to go and create custom apps or integrations that provide additional feature set for the main product. And so these companies would also provide a marketplace where these developers can list the custom apps that they built so that other customers can go and download and use the apps. And so developers are potentially looking to start making some money on that as well. And so specifically at Atlassian, Atlassian happens to be one such company that has a very large marketplace. Maybe it's a surprising fact, but we actually have one of the largest enterprise software marketplaces out there with over 5,000 different apps available. And all these apps, they extend one of our different products. Maybe some of you have used Jira or Confluence, maybe not, but yeah, there are over 5,000 apps out there. And having that many apps essentially translates into having more than 1,000 different independent developers or vendors, in other words, selling these apps, right? So you can kind of imagine the scope and the level of complexity that this situation results in. So before going any further, I just also want to emphasize the stakeholders that exist in the marketplace ecosystem. So first of all, you have the owner. So in our case, it's Atlassian, but really any other company that provides an extensible platform and a developer framework. And then you have the partners. So these are third-party developers that are looking to make a profit on creating custom apps and then making them available to customers. And then finally, you have the customers. So these are obviously the users of the main products. They install custom apps and leverage integrations on the product in order to achieve their very unique and specific business needs. So these are kind of the stakeholders that we have to consider when we build a security program for the ecosystem marketplace. So given this background, let's talk a little bit about the challenges that are unique for this particular domain. So first of all, there is the bigger kind of philosophical question of who even owns the risk here. Because there are so many different stakeholders, the answer isn't necessarily straightforward. Just as a contrast, let's think about a vulnerability that arises in an Atlassian product. It's kind of a given that Atlassian is then fully responsible for any costs associated with that vulnerability. But if a vulnerability arises in a marketplace app, then like who's responsible then, right? Is it the partner because they wrote the code, or maybe it's Atlassian because they decided to list it on their marketplace, or maybe it's the customer because they ultimately chose to download the app. So you see how like there is this deeper question that makes the issue at hand pretty complex. But then there's also the problem of just the sheer variety and scale that we have to deal with in the marketplace. Among the thousands of apps available, every app is kind of unique in terms of functionality and the risk it represents to the customer. For example, some apps are just static. Maybe they don't do very much. Maybe all they do is just beautify the core product and that's all they do. But then there's other apps that perform sensitive actions on the platform. For example, running custom code or storing sensitive customer data. So that's an entirely different threat model right there. But even beyond just looking at the functionality, there's also a huge variety in the security footprint when you look at any given app. So some apps may become very popular on the marketplace and they will have millions of installs across all kinds of customers, right, from different industries. And so these apps potentially have access to very large amounts of data and potentially very sensitive data as well. But then you have, on the other hand, apps that maybe don't have a lot of installs, but then there is a lot more of them. So then you have this disproportionate long tail of apps that don't have a lot of installs, but may potentially pose a risk to customers anyway. And then as a final point, there's also a huge variety in the types of security resources available to each and every app. So some partners become very successful and profitable under the model where they develop apps on the marketplace. So they grow into very large and successful companies in their own right. And these companies can actually invest in security. They can build teams and invest in security programs. And that's great. But then there's tons of partners who are just one-person shops with maybe a single developer. And in that case, it's very difficult to expect them to have the resources or time or knowledge needed to put security first. So when you consider all these different factors, you can see how it becomes really challenging to create a security program that can fit all of these different parameters. And it makes it difficult to kind of know what's appropriate security measures that we need to take to make our marketplace secure. And then the final piece I want to mention quickly is kind of the technical aspect of security marketplace ecosystem. When you're a product security engineer, you normally have a pretty good visibility into what the engineering team is doing. Like you can talk to developers, you can look at the code, you can escalate issues if they don't get resolved. So you have a lot of control. But when it comes to third-party apps on a marketplace, you really don't have the luxury at all. We don't have very good visibility into what apps are doing. And this may vary from marketplace to marketplace, but most of the time you don't have good visibility into kind of the architecture and the code base behind each of the apps. And beyond that, you also don't have a very good idea of what the day-to-day operations look like for each of the partners when it comes to security. So we don't really know, as much as we want to, we don't really know what best practices they follow, if any at all. So maybe they do code reviews, maybe they don't, maybe they do security testing, and maybe they don't. We just don't know. And again, this makes it really challenging for us to estimate what security measures we should be taking to make the marketplace more secure. Cool. That said, our goals at Atlassian, as well as I'm sure many other ecosystem security teams, we want for our marketplace to be as secure as possible for our customers. And so in light of this, of course, we've defined some goals. for our ecosystem security program. The first goal, it kind of goes without saying, it's to protect customer data. Everything else kind of builds upon that. So customer data is a number one priority. And in order to secure customer data, we must first get to the point where we have good visibility into what's happening in the marketplace. We want to make sure we understand the existing security posture and also kind of what the main problems are, what the risks are. So this means essentially some form of continuous monitoring and security review on an ongoing basis. And from there, we also want to use this data to really understand what potential security trends there are so that we can make decisions on any potential platform improvements. For example, if we see a lot of a particular vulnerability on the marketplace in different apps, then we can really ask ourselves, like, is this something we can fix on the platform level and make the platform more secure by default and make it easier for developers to build secure apps by default? So finally, there's a final point about partner support. We want to enable our partners to do the right thing when it comes to security. And the key word here really is enabling, because it's really important to understand that these developers, they're all like legally independent entities. And we can't exactly go and tell them, hey, you're supposed to do this, or how they're supposed to run their businesses. They didn't hire us, we're not their security team, so it becomes kind of awkward, right? However, what we can do, we can provide them with resources and the tools and education needed to make security less painful for them to implement. So this is kind of our philosophy and our goal with our program. So these goals are great, but the question is, how do we actually get there? And like we still have the big problem of scaling, as well as all the challenges I talked about earlier in the slides. So I'm going to hand it over to Malika, and she's going to talk a little bit about one of the approaches that we took in order to address this problem space, and then some of the learnings from this implementation. So over to you.
Jana, so to help tackle our scaling challenges, we chose to leverage bug bounty programs. So to start, I'll explain what a bug bounty program is. And if you haven't gotten a chance yet, remember to fill out the poll question. So far it looks like 50% of us here have submitted submissions to a bug bounty program before, which is really awesome. And if you haven't, I highly recommend that you try out programs like HackerOne and BugCrowd to get more security experience. So if you were a product security engineer setting up a standard single bug bounty program for one product, you would need to start by creating a brief describing specific targets, areas of your application, in and out of scope. You would then invite security researchers through this bounty program and then wait for them to submit vulnerabilities that you found, that they found on the product you're securing. After a submission comes in and you assess if the vulnerability is valid and what its severity is, you then pay out the security researcher for their finding, and then you work with your product engineers to resolve the issue. And then this cycle continues until you decide to close or pause your bug bounty program for whatever reason. So compared to a single product bug bounty program, a marketplace bounty program is quite involved, because instead of having one program, you need to be able to scale to create thousands of bug bounty programs. And because a marketplace ecosystem has multiple stakeholders, the marketplace bug bounty program requires a shared responsibility model. So each marketplace partner or third-party app developer has to set up an individual bounty program that is hosted by the platform owner. In this case, we'll use Atlasian as an example. So Atlasian covers the bounty program cost for each marketplace partner, and then the partners pay out for each vulnerability submission, and then they're also responsible for fixing these issues in their individual marketplace apps. As the program host, we had to establish a framework to onboard thousands of marketplace apps and ensure that we're enabling and supporting our marketplace partners by setting them up for success. So To create healthy bounty programs for our partners, we worked with our bug bounty vendor platform to define a set of criteria that we determined would set our partners up for success. All of our bounty programs pay for their submissions to ensure that security researchers are properly incentivized. So there are bounty programs that are points only with no monetary incentive. However, these tend to not receive higher severity vulnerability findings because there's really no incentive for a more experienced security researcher to submit findings to these programs. We also gradually increase the number of security researchers invited to a marketplace program. So in the beginning, we make sure this number is small so that a partner can get used to responding and fixing vulnerabilities. And once they've gotten accustomed to this process, which takes anywhere from 2 weeks to a month, we increase the number of researchers to 250, which we've determined is a good baseline number of researchers for a bounty program. The last thing that we did was define specific triage and remediation SLA timeframes or agreements with our marketplace partners. So a partner would need to triage a vulnerability finding within 2 weeks of receiving it, and then depending on the severity of the vulnerability, they have a certain remediation timeframe they need to patch that issue by. In general, higher the severity, shorter the timeframe there is to fix it. So with these SLA timeframes, we're able to assess if a partner is being responsive and actively engaging in their bounty program. So you may be wondering, how do we actually manage all of the marketplace bounty programs? And the short answer is through metrics. We use our bug bounty vendor platform's API to pull metrics across all of our bounty programs, and then we created an internal service that funnels important vulnerability information to Jira. And then why we do this is because one of the most important metrics that we keep track of are SLA violations. Using our internal service, we can apply and keep track of SLA violations on the bug bounty vulnerability findings. And then violating these SLAs negatively impacts a marketplace partner's ability to be listed in our marketplace program, and of course threatens our customer data because of these unpatched vulnerabilities. Another metric that we keep track of is the average payout submission across all programs. This helps us understand if this marketplace bounty program is even worth our stakeholders' time and monetary investment. So an individual pen test done by a consulting firm can cost anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000. And then especially hiring your own dedicated security team is quite expensive as well. So as long as running a bounty program stays below these costs, it's a good reward for its value. On average, we've seen our marketplace partners spend $2,500 for bounty payouts in a year, which is significantly less than a pen test assessment or keeping a dedicated security team, which greatly benefits our smaller marketplace partners that have teams of like 1 to 5 developers. We also look at the top vulnerability types, which helps us fix issues at either the platform level or shows that we need to invest in better security training and education for our marketplace partners. For example, if we've noticed that there are many authorization issues continuously that come up across multiple programs, maybe there's something that we need to fix at the platform level or education level. Are we missing the ability to scope down access to our products, or do our marketplace partners need help understanding how to implement authorization checks correctly? We collect many more metrics, but these are just 3 important ones that I wanted to share with everyone today. There are many benefits of running a marketplace bug bounty program. For the program host, it helps us scale security testing faster than in-house reviews, and allows for continuous testing rather than one-time testing before listing into our marketplace. For marketplace partners, it's also an easier and just less expensive way to invest in security. And then ultimately for our customers, this just helps increase their trust within our platform. Running a bug bounty program helps promote a shared responsibility model between the platform host and marketplace partners as well, which is why we have been enjoying using this method. And now Jana will cover challenges that we faced so far.
Sure. Yeah, so like Malika said, there's many benefits to using a bug bounty program in the context of a marketplace ecosystem. But it's also important to call out that bug bounty is not a magic bullet solution. And we certainly ran into some challenges while we're building upon this program. And I kind of want to talk about them a little bit. So for example, one of the challenges that we've encountered is partner engagement. So the program by design is opt-in. So this means that partners manage their own bug bounty program, and we can't really force them to participate if they don't want to for any reason, right? So while some partners think it's actually a great opportunity to uplift their security posture in a cost-effective way, there's other partners who still don't have the resources or staff to manage such a program. And so what this means essentially is that eventually we'll simply cap out on how many partners are onboarded to the program and how many apps on the marketplace are covered. And then you'll have this remainder of marketplace apps that won't have any security coverage. So we'll have to find other ways to secure that remainder. And then another challenge is related to just the assurance of coverage. And this is not unique to the marketplace bug bounty program implementation. This is kind of typical of bug bounties in general. It's kind of hard to tell if your program is receiving, is getting activity, or if your app is secure, right? So if you're not receiving a lot of submissions, you may be wondering if, your targets are being tested at all, or if your app is actually secure. And again, this is really difficult to measure, although you can experiment with different parameters like bounty payouts or the number of researchers to see if your activity goes up, just to test your theory. But when it comes to marketplace bug bounty programs in particular, there's also the problem of kind of competing for researchers' time. When we have hundreds of programs and potentially hundreds, if not thousands of apps participating, you're essentially competing for talent, but all the programs are fairly similar, so you're not really offering any special incentive program over program to researchers to attract that talent. So that certainly becomes a challenge to us as well. Yes, so for these reasons, and I'm sure there's more, we recognize that you can't spend all your time on bug bounty alone. It's not a perfect solution, but instead you need a more layered approach to security. And so we're recognizing the need in investing in other areas of an application security spectrum as well. For example, pen testing being one, vulnerability management, kind of aggregating data across different sources and tracking trends is another one. We're also investing heavily into automated scanning for all of the marketplace apps, just to catch any low-hanging fruit that would otherwise go undetected and unpatched. Nevertheless, we still think that bug bounty is a very effective solution. It served us really well for what we're trying to accomplish, for scale and for cost effectiveness. But we find that it works best combined with other kind of complementary security initiatives, which is kind of what we're trying to do. So cool. With that being said, this is all we had to share with you today. Hopefully you enjoyed the talk. I think we have a couple of minutes for any questions and feedback, so happy to take that. Otherwise, just want to say feel free to reach out to myself or Malika on LinkedIn or social media, or also stop by the Atlasian booth. We have a booth set up if you're interested in any potential hiring opportunities we have. So again, thank you so much. Just checking the questions.
Thank you.
Oh, did you see the poll results?
Yeah, it's cool. It looks like a lot of the majority of people haven't submitted to a bug bounty program before, but hopefully this encouraged them to actually try.
Yeah, come hack on the marketplace.
Yeah, reach out to us if you'd like to be invited.
Cool. Well, sounds like no questions. let's wrap it up. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. This was great.
Thanks, everyone.